Hello everyone, welcome back. My name's Matthew and today we're going to be discussing one major thing that may be holding your ukulele playing back. This is one of those small things that makes a huge difference, but yet I hardly ever see it mentioned in books or watching other teachers or on YouTube or anything like that. So I'm going to sort of address that today and we're going to look at lazy fingers. In order to get players started, a lot of the time teachers will sort of skip over the basics and the fundamentals of proper posture, and it's often that students later in their playing careers have to go back and address these fundamentals. Now I can understand why. You just want to get going, or even if you're self-taught you wouldn't even know whether you were doing it right or wrong. So this is not to say that you've been doing it wrong all this time, so I'll just put that disclaimer out there. If you haven't ever sort of considered this before, don't panic, I've got you covered in this video. But what we're essentially discussing is how to actually press down your fingers on the strings and make sure that you're not getting any fret buzz, any kind of sort of dead sounds like that. And this is what we mean by lazy fingers. Our fingers have to A, be pressing down hard enough, and B, be tall enough. And it's that second thing that not a lot of people are sort of taught. But let's talk about the first thing. First of all, makes sense, right? So, pressing down hard enough. Well, I'll say hard enough, but actually just pressing down enough. There is a difference. Of course, you squeeze down to make a note. Let's just do a normal C chord, and let's just focus on that string closest to the ground, the A string. Now I'm obviously squeezing down enough because I can hear a nice clean note. There's no dead sound or buzzing or anything like that. But apart from that, I could be pressing really hard or super light. Either way, I'm still getting that note. So what is the right approach? Do I press and squeeze really hard, or do I sort of take the pressure off? Well, the truth is you've got to find a sweet spot that works for you. And by works, I don't just mean is enough to make the sound, but actually works in a way that's comfortable and ergonomic as well. Because the last thing you want to be doing is pressing loads of fingers down, especially if it's a 3 or 4 finger chord, squeezing all those very small and delicate muscles in the hand. We don't want to be doing that. If you're finding yourself you have to press too hard, then there are other things that you might want to consider that we'll come back to in a minute. But what you should be aiming to do is to be able to play a chord with the least amount of pressure possible, but still giving you enough to make a sound. So if I'm on a G7, this is quite a good one, a good example to start with. You want to make sure that you can start off with a nice strong squeeze and then slowly release the pressure. And there you go, I've just started to lose the A string there and the C string now. So I'm going to put the pressure back on very gradually, and there we go. Just that minimum, that borderline. Maybe put just a tad more on just to make sure that you're not literally on the border and you could slip back into a buzzy sound again. You don't want to be right on the fence, you do want to be comfortably within the right amount of pressure. But the point is not too much, you want just enough to get you going. And I would try that on all sorts of chords. And if you do find yourself tensing up, give your hand a shake. That's it. And try again. Now here's that other thing that I was going to talk about. The actual angle of your shape. Are they tall enough? Is it in the right position, coming from the right angle? All of those little decisions. These are, again, those little things that really make a big difference. To first of all find out if you're actually doing this right, after you've pressed enough to make sure the strings are ringing, play each string on its own. And for a G7 chord, that is exactly what we want to hear. Each string ringing nice and cleanly. However, a common issue I do see sometimes maybe on an F chord is we get this sound. What's going on there? Well, the F chord is a bit tricky because both fingers have to cross one or more strings. This first finger is obviously on the E string, so it's going over the top of the A string, and we need to make sure it does that cleanly so that we're not touching the A string and getting any either erroneous notes or those buzzing sounds. And of course the middle finger has to go all the way across to the very top of the string set, the G. And and it's got to leave the C, E and A strings all clean in order to do so. And yet the temptation is to have flat fingers. And now you could find it as you're playing each string on their own, the strings you're actually pressing down sound fine. And that can make you think, well, I must be doing something right. Well, you are, you're halfway there. But the really important thing is you need to make sure your hands are nice and curly so that your fingertips are almost going straight down on the strings, and then the rest of the fingers are going nice and tall up and away from the strings. If you've got flat fingers like this, even if the strings you're pressing down on sound fine, your skin is actually going to catch on the next string over. So nice and tall fingers, bringing the wrist round just like this, bringing it round, maybe even bring the arm round a bit if you need to, until all of those strings are ringing out nice and cleanly. Another common problem as well is something to do with the angle of approach. Sometimes you sort of see people trying to do a G chord with their thumbs all the way up here. Sometimes it's on the back of the neck and anywhere in between. And the reason that's important is because where you place the thumb affects the angle of your fingers. You see when my thumb's up the top here, and then watch my fingers as I put my thumb on the back of the neck. Can you see how they twist round? Now, if I've got them with my thumb on the back, I'm finding it a bit hard to get that A string to ring out cleanly. And that's because the other two fingers are sort of squishing it, and the angle is sort of making me rotate my hand so that it's almost on top of the fret itself, rather than in the gap where it should be. Whereas if I've got my thumb too high up, I've got too much pressure, too much cramp going on. I need to find the sweet spot. And that happens to be, for me, with the thumb sort of in the middle, not far on the back, not really far over, but somewhere in between. And this is sort of following on from that second point, or you could consider it even a third point, finding the sweet spot that works for you. Don't be lazy, or not even necessarily lazy, but just not thinking of alternatives. Try and push yourself. Loads and loads of people, I say, have you experimented playing the B flat chord this way or that way, or A chord this, G chord that? And you'd be surprised the amount of times that people say, oh, I'd never considered playing it a different way. I just sort of put my fingers down and hope for the best. That's a valid approach when you're getting started, but hopefully if you know a few chords and you've identified some weaker areas, you can keep those chords in mind and have a dedicated practice session for them. Try and see, just by putting the thumb in a different place, or trying to make sure you're squeezing down those fingers enough, or having the right angle, having those fingers arched upright and curled up enough. Try all of those things in a dedicated practice session, and hopefully over time you'll find that those chords become either easier or less painful, or preferably both. So there we are, those are just a few quick tips on how to avoid lazy fingers. What do you think of this? Has this helped? Are you excited to try some new chords and hopefully unlock some more ways of playing on the fingerboard? Do let me know in the comments below. And I'll see you in another video as well. I've got plenty more just like this one right here for you to click on and watch right now. So I'll see you over there.